All righty, we are live. Rambam. We are in chapter 9. And we're going into, we started yesterday the 39 malachas, the 39 categories of work.
Yeah.
And we're going now into greater detail. So a person who bakes an amount of food, excuse me. Over here. Just have to look something up. So bakes an amount of food the size of a dried fig is liable, right? 3 liabilities are possible. We learned, right? For a sacrifice, if it was inadvertent, sometimes hold the temple, of course, right? If it was done willfully, so then you would get chorus or the premature death. And if it was done with witnesses willfully, right, then you could have the death sentence, right? That's what it means, liable. So just as a person is liable for baking bread, he's liable for cooking food or herbs or for heating water or all types of one activity, the one type of activity, right? Even though called the baking. Okay. The minimum amount of water for which one is liable of heating is an amount sufficient to wash a small limb. Minimum. Wash a small toe of a newborn baby. Okay. Not much.
Tiny amount.
Yeah, not much. The minimum amount of herbs for which one is liable amount required to serve the purpose for which they are being cooked. Right, so you're cooking herbs. So in other words, they're being as herbs for, to cook something. So whatever, it's small. Okay, a person who places an egg next to a kettle so that it will become slightly cooked is liable if the egg becomes cooked. For a person who cooks with a derivative of fire is considered as if he cooked with the fire itself. So it's only next to the fire. It's not on the fire.
Yeah.
But that's a derivative of fire and therefore considered as cooking. Similarly, a person who washes aged salted fish or sole, very thin, soft fish with hot water is liable because that actually cooks the fish and makes it now ready to be eaten. Washing them with hot water replaces the cooking process. They require the same principles apply with other similar situations. So it's just giving now the parameter of what's called cooking on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Okay. A person who breaks open an egg over a warm cloth, over sand, over dust on the road that are heated by the sun is not liable, even though it becomes roasted. For the derivative of the heat of the sun is governed by different laws than governing the derivatives of fire, because that's not called fire anymore.
From the sun.
It's from the sun. So that is it means not liable. Are you allowed to do it? It's prohibited to do, but you're not liable. Whenever it says not liable, means so prohibited, biblically or rabbinically? Rabbinically, right? Be rabbinic. For the most part, it's rabbinic. Okay, for the most part, it would be rabbinic when we say that. Nevertheless, sages instituted a decree forbidding cooking with the derivative heat of the sun, lest one cook with the derivative of fire. Right? In other words, it's too similar. It's going one will lead you to another, but it's rabbinic law. Similarly, a person who cooks using a hot springs of Tiberias, and the like is not held liable again, but not permitted. A person who cooks food that has been completely cooked on a fire, or one who cooks food that does not need to be cooked at all is not liable. Right? So in other words, it's already cooked. The roast is cooked, but you're putting it back on the fire.
It's okay?
No. Didn't say it's okay. You said you're not liable.
Not liable, okay.
You're not allowed to do it. Right? Not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
But you're not liable. Why? No, why is it not liable?
It's already cooked.
Because it's already cooked.
Okay.
Already cooked.
Yeah.
Right? The prohibition is cooking, but you didn't cook. You heated it up. That's not called cooking. Cooking means you took something that was not in an edible state and you put it in an edible state, but it was in an edible state already. But rabbinically, you're not allowed. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
When one person brought fire, another brought wood, another brought a pot, another brought water, although another brought the meat, another put in spices, and another stirred it, all are liable for cooking. Right? Each one has got a different part, but each one is liable.
Yeah.
For anyone who performs an activity that is necessary for cooking is considered as having performed the forbidden labor, right? But what's important over here, because each one did something that's part of cooking. You don't have to do everything, but each one is liable. You might think that it's only the collective whole that would be liable. No,
it's each piece.
Each one is liable, right? Liable for what?
Cooking.
Liable. What are they liable for?
For partaking in the process of cooking.
What are they liable for as a result? Either bringing a sacrifice or early death or death penalty. Okay? Got it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we have to
That's what it means. Remember, when we say liable, means you're liable for a consequence. Right? Those are the three consequences, right? Biblically. Right? Biblically. There can be rabbinic also consequences, but this is biblical. The word liable means biblical.
Bringing a sacrifice, early death, and then what was the middle one you said?
Death is penalty itself.
Oh, the death penalty. Okay.
Right? Early death is from the hands of heaven.
The death penalty itself is from the court.
Right. If by contrast, one put down the pot, another came and added water. So he put it on pot. There's nothing in the pot, but he put it on the fire. But is that cooking?
No.
No, why not?
Because there's nothing.
Because there's nothing there cooked, right? So another came and added water, another came and added meat, another came and added spices, another came and added fire, another came and placed the wood under the fire, another came and stirred it. It is only the latter two that are liable for the cooking. The one who placed the fire, right? Remember, this is the opposite now order, right? The opposite order.
Because it was first building the fire and then doing everything.
Right, before it was first building the fire, so that each one had a part. But here, the fire came last. So only the one who made the fire at the end is liable. But not that the others can do it. Again, it's giving us a parameter of the law, right? So the last two, the one who placed the wood and made the fire, and the one who stirred, because stirring is also considered cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah? Got it? When a person places meat over coals and a portion of the size of a dried fig becomes thoroughly roasted, he is liable even when the portions that are roasted are separated and located on 2 or 3 portions of a piece of meat. Oh, one second. You know what? I wasn't paying attention. I was reading words and not fully paying attention.
Yeah.
So when a person places meat over coals, right? And the portion of the size of a dried fig becomes thoroughly roasted. So he's liable. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Even when the portions that are roasted are separated and located on 2 or 3 portions of a piece of meat.
So even if it doesn't,
because even it was separated, but together there is that dried fig amount, liable.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if the amount of the dried fig is separated, like it was like a half dried fig.
Right. When there's not a portion of the size of a dried fig that has become thoroughly roasted, but the entire piece of meat becomes half cooked, one is liable. Why? Because it's the entire thing half cooked. Oh, okay, because
the bandit would eat it.
Yeah, because the bandit would eat it a third cooked. So half cooked for sure.
Someone would eat it if they were in like a
In other words, half cooked. In other words, half cooked is considered. People buy. I want my steak rare, right? If I want it rare, that's half cooked, right? So that's even though most people don't eat it that way,
some might,
but some do eat it that way, right? The thief, I think, is only a third. I think the bandit, it's say the amount there, it's only a third, and this is a half, so it's even more.
It doesn't say the amount. It says, like the food of Ben Grosse, who's a wanted bandit who would eat his food hurriedly.
Okay. If, however, but that's because the entire piece became half cooked, right?
Yeah.
If, however, the half cooked from one side only, one is not liable until he turns it so that it becomes half cooked on both sides.
Okay, so that's be
Which
completely
makes it
half
go.
cooked.
Right. Right. If a person forgot and attached a loaf to an oven on the Shabbos, but remembered the prohibition involving afterwards, he may remove it before it bakes and causes him to be liable for performing a forbidden labor.
Then why, how can he may remove it and then, oh, I see, if he didn't remove
Because
it.
if he removes it, then he's removing it before it becomes baked, so
yeah.
he won't be liable.
Yeah,
So he's allowed to do it because he forgot. He did, right. He put it on. He didn't realize the Shabbos, and he put like in the oven on the whatever, right? So he can remove it because you might think
so if
removing
you had
it.
something on like a plata, for instance, and you saw it was starting to, like, if you left it on there for some reason, it was starting to cook, then you could remove it.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about you put it on the plat on Shabbos, not before Shabbos. Before Shabbos, that's
Oh,
a
yeah, it
different
says
story.
yeah,
This you did it on Shabbos, right? That's a different story. Your question was if you did before Shabbos.
then that'd be yeah.
No, then that's a different story. We learned that already, those laws. We started at least. Okay, 6, a person who melts even the slightest amount of metal or who heats a piece of metal until it glows like a coal performs a derivative of forbidden labor of cooking. Similarly, a person who melts wax, tallow tar, brown tar, or pitch, and the like performs a derivative of the forbidden labor of cooking and is liable. Similarly, a person who heats an earthenware utensil until it becomes hard clay is liable for cooking. The general principle is whether one softens a firm entity with fire or hardens a soft entity, one is liable for cooking. Right? So it's a derivative of cooking. It's not real called cooking, right? Because cooking means you're cooking food.
Yeah.
But here you heated something up. Cooking means you took a flame and you heated something up. So the derivative of that is even if you took a piece of metal and hard piece of metal and you heated it up, that itself is a derivative of cooking.
And just to clarify, even if something's a rabbinic, if one violates
This is
rabbinic,
that's biblical.
yeah, because
this was biblical.
Because he's liable.
Well, no, because what he did was not because he's liable.
No.
Because it is a biblical prohibition, what he did, therefore he's liable.
Okay.
That's the other way around.
So you can't be held liable if you violate a rabbinic prohibition.
Not the term libel,
Okay.
which means chayiv in Hebrew, right? Right. No, but there might be a consequence, a rabbinic consequence. Okay. That's a different, right? Okay, one who shears wool or hair from an animal or a beast, whether alive or dead, is liable. This applies. Okay, wow. So we finished with cooking. We're now going to the malacha called goyzes. The previous one was called bishul, or make sure I got the oife. No, it was oife, baking, not bishul. That's interesting. Just a second. Bishul is part of oife. Okay, we're going now to another malacha, shearing. In Hebrew, it's called goyzes. I need one moment or a couple moments.
Okay. So Trinidad and Tobago is in the Commonwealth?
Mhm.
So the conference was there?
Yes, it was held there.
Okay.
This was in 2009. So every 2 years, it's held in different Commonwealth countries.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is there any like Republican movement in Trinidad and Tobago?
We have Republic.
No, you are a republic?
Yeah, the
You're
Republic.
not a constitutional monarchy?
No, since 1976.
Oh, you're still in the Commonwealth.
Still in the Commonwealth. So you can be a Republic
Yeah,
and still be in the Commonwealth.
so she's not your head of, King Charles isn't the.
No, it came out in 1976.
Okay,
Mhm. And followed by Barbados 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And so many people thought, oh, it was the first time it was in the Caribbean, and like these guys don't know the history.
Yeah,
No. Dominica did it before the island of Dominica, so they're also a republic. So the three republics are TNT, Dominica, and Barbados.
in all the Caribbean?
Yeah.
And the rest are all monarchies?
And they're all, so they have governor generals, just
Yeah.
as a governor general.
Yeah,
Jamaica is contemplating the idea. They have been toying with it for a while, but they still haven't done anything about it. But we said early on, no, it doesn't make sense, and I totally agree.
but I mean, beyond the sort of ideological fact that like, that like it's less colonial if you have your own like head of state or head of government, no, head of state.
I gotta say that.
Is there like what's sort of what was like the motivation for getting rid of the monarchy in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, from my recollection, it's the idea that why should someone who is thousands of miles away,
Yeah,
have control over the runnings of our state?
yeah.
Because as you rightly said, it is the head of state.
Mhm.
You have head of government,
Mhm.
which will be the prime minister, but head of
Yeah.
state, so you have to get approval, quote unquote,
Yeah,
from a foreign entity,
yeah,
to run our affairs, and
yeah,
and we said no. I was a child when it happened, but I was totally for it. I was like, yeah. So on our currency, just as in Canada, you have the Queen on the currency. You have the crown courts and so on.
Yeah.
So, we are an independent nation,
yeah,
and if you're independent, it means that you're exactly that.
yeah,
You run all of your affairs.
yeah.
So so it was a resolution that I recall was easily passed. There was no
There's no downside to it?
no, none whatsoever.
Okay,
Right. We feel a lot more in charge of our running of our affairs.
yeah,
The only thing is that from time to time we go to the Privy Council,
yeah,
in terms of legal issues,
oh, yeah,
even though we have a Caribbean Court of Appeal.
yeah,
But unfortunately, you find, and this is the case of many of the older jurists, they still have an affinity to the Jewish prudence in England. They think that they can make better decisions.
so they go to them just for advice, or they actually like bring their case?
So there are cases, a few cases, yes.
Yeah.
Difficult cases, they go to the Privy Council, but we do have a Caribbean Court of Appeal, which is based in Trinidad. Yeah.
All right, sorry, folks.
No,
We have workers also downstairs. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay. We good?
they work on Sunday?
Yeah, these guys, contractors. Yeah. Not on Shabbos, so for us at least. All right. One who shares wool or hair from an animal or a beast, whether alive dead, is liable, right?
Yeah.
This applies even when he removes the substances from skin. Now, there's not just the skin itself, but the substances, right? What is the minimum measure of one is liable? Enough to spin a thread that is twice the length of a width of a sit from it.
What's a sit from it?
I don't know. How long is the width of a sit? The distance of
The doctor's
from
book.
the thumb to the first finger when they are extended as far as possible. So this length, probably 2/3 of a zeros. Okay, got it?
Not really.
Well, this long.
Yeah.
Okay. A person who tears off a wing of a bird is liable for performing derivative of shearing.
Mm.
One who spins wool from a living animal is not liable, for this is not the ordinary manner of shearing, because it's not regular, okay? Nor is this the ordinary manner of beating, nor is this the ordinary manner of spinning. Okay. A person who cuts his nails or his hair, his mustache or his beard performs a derivative of forbidden labor of shearing and is liable. This applies provided one cuts them using utensils. If one removes them by hand, one is not liable. Are you allowed to do it?
No,
No.
that's
Right.
rabbinic.
That's rabbinic, exactly. The above applies regarding both one's hands, one's own nails, or the like, and those of a colleague. You can't do it for someone else either. Similarly, a person who cuts a wart from his body, whether using a utensil or by hand, is not liable. The above applies regarding both one's own warts or those of a colleague. It is permitted to remove the wart in the temple by hand, but not with a utensil. If it is dry, one may cut it off with a utensil in order to take part in the temple service. Why? Because warts are things that that you're not allowed to then be part of the service. So in the temple, all rabbinic law is suspended. Right? So since here it's a rabbinic law, and this is preventing this Kohen from doing service because it becomes a chatzitza. You say in English separation, right? A separation. So therefore, he can remove it as a result.
Okay.
Why in the temple the rabbinic law is not observed?
I think I learned this yesterday, but I'm not sure if this is right. But is it because, like, if you have people of such a certain holy level where they don't need a boundary around the...
Exactly. Right. Because they're holy people in their service. Also, the whole thing there is serving of God. So they're going to be much more aware and therefore not transgress the biblical law. So therefore the rabbinic law, because what's the rabbinic law? Is a fence around in order to make sure, like we said about cooking before, right? Or baking before and cooking, right? Doing certain things because it may then, lead you. If you're going to cook from the sun, then you're going to think, oh, I'll cook from a fire, But in such a holy place with such holy individuals, we're not so worried about that. Okay? Halacha 9. How much hair is it necessary for a person to remove with a utensil to be liable? 2 hairs. If one removes a gray hair and a dark hair, one is liable for removing even one from a dark. If one removes a gray hair from a dark one, wow, even one. Look at that. Why? Because you want to look young. So moving even one, he would be liable. Normally it has to be 2. We always speak, like 2 letters make a word. 2 hairs is considered, the act of shearing, right? But no, if the fact that you move the gray hair so you could look young, so therefore that itself is, the benefit from it, and you'd be liable. Following laws apply to a nail when the majority of it has been split, or to strips of flesh that have begun to peel. If they have split upward, an annoyed person, one may remove them by hand, but not with a utensil. If, however, they remove them with a utensil, then one is not liable. Not liable, but not allowed to. Right? If they do not annoy the person, it's forbidden to remove them even by hand. If the majority has not been split, nor has it begun to peel, it is forbidden to remove it even by hand. And
So
one who removes it with the utensil is liable.
So if you have a nail that's sort of like falling off,
Exactly.
Discomfort.
So if it's mostly split then and it's discomfort, then you could remove it
by hand.
by hand, only by hand,
Yeah.
only by hand. Well, no, that's called by hand too.
Oh,
I mean, not a utensil.
Hey,
The difference is the difference utensil. Difference utensil by that's not utensil. That's right. A person who whitens. Okay, now we finished with
Yeah,
goizes.
yeah.
Goizes is
Shearing.
shearing. Now we're going melabin. Melabin means whitening, dyeing. Well, in particular, yeah, a person who whitens wool, linen, wool to be dyed crimson. What's crimson?
Right.
It's a reddish brown.
Yeah,
Reddish
yeah.
brown?
Yeah.
Okay. Or any other fabrics that ordinary whitening is liable. What is the minimum measure of when it's liable? An amount of fibers large enough to produce a thread as long as twice the width of a sit, 4 handbreadths. So here, this is 1 handbreadth, 4 of these,
Mhm.
that size, that you whiten.
Mhm.
All right, laundering. Now, okay, so we finished with malabin.
That was
Right? Yeah. Now it's mechabes. Thank you. Laundering. Clothes is a derivative of the forbidden labor. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's part of whitening.
What? Laundering?
Yeah. Laundering is a part, is a derivative of the forbidden labor of whitening and causes one to be liable, right? Other, you didn't whiten the garment,
Yeah.
you just cleansed the garment,
Mhm.
but that is a derivative of whitening. Okay? A person who wrings out a garment with water absorbed in it is discharged, is considered as one is laundered and is held liable.
Yeah.
Wringing out a garment is one of the activities necessary for laundry, as stirring is one of the activities necessary for cooking, right? Like, stirring is not, since it's a part of cooking, so therefore
Yeah.
we consider cooking when you stir on the fire, right? So the same thing is over here, wringing out a garment, because that's part of laundering, which is part of whitening. There's no concept of wringing out hair. Similarly, one is not liable for wringing out leather, because I guess that's not a concept.
But it's rabbinic to wring out hair. There's a rabbinic prohibition on wringing out hair.
No.
A woman can't wring out her hair if her hair is wet, she can't wring it out on Shabbat.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from something else.
Yeah. I'm no, what you're saying is true, but I'm trying to figure out how this fits out over here. What in 1 second? Ein schita b'seir. We'll have to look into this. Not so simple. I think it might be more about the towel. About you gotta be careful with the towel when you use it. You gotta
Yeah.
go to the mikvah on Shabbos, for example,
Mhm.
right? Like,
But then what about the beard as well too? Depending on the length of the
Yeah,
beard.
yeah.
There's a tendency to.
so okay, we have to look into that. I'm not because here he didn't say that you're not liable.
Yeah.
He said there's no concept of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means even rabbinically,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's what. So I've said. So maybe it's got to do with something. Anyway, that's a good question. We need to look into that. Okay. Again, look at the words. There's no concept of ringing. That's not, you're not liable, but it's not permitted,
Mhm.
right? That would be the language you use. Okay. Next thing, menapitz. Menapitz is one who beats wool, linen, wool, beats wool, linen, wool to be dyed crimson, or any other similar fabrics is liable. What is the minimum measure of one is liable? An amount of fibers large enough to produce a thread of 4 handbreadths long, as we said. A person who beats animal sinews until they become like wool, so that the cord can be spun from them, is liable for performing derivative of beating.
Mhm.
So this is menapitz, it's beating. In other words, you're trying to, like you're taking the sinews, right? And you want to create a cord from it. So you beat it I don't know, I guess that strengthens it or something. I don't know exactly what it does. Right? But you're strengthening the fabric over here by beating it.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly clear. Got to go back to the farm and learn all this stuff. Okay, now we're doing a different one. This is tseveya, dyeing. Before was whitening.
Whitening, yeah.
What was that whitening? Derivative of whitening?
Laundering.
Laundering, right? So that was about making things white and clean,
Yeah.
right? This is tseveya is dyeing. A
Yeah.
person who dyes a thread that is 4 handbreadths long or fabric which is a thread of the length can be spun is liable. A person is not liable unless the dye he uses will make a permanent change in the article's color.
Yeah.
When the application of color will not have a permanent effect, meaning one who applies red clay or vermilion to iron, huh? Yeah, you know what that is? What that?
I knew about it.
Or brass. All right, you're putting it to brass. One's not liable. It can be removed immediately without dyeing it at all. Whenever a person performs a labor that does not have a permanent effect on Shabbos, he is not liable. Not permitted, but not liable.
Yeah.
A person who creates a color is liable for performing a derivative of the labor of dyeing. What is implied? One mixed a gallon juice with vitriol until the entire mixture turned black, or mixed is atis into saffron water until the entire mixture turned green and the light. Right now, you're making a color from natural natural things, right? What is the minimum measure of the one's liable? An amount of dye large enough to dye a thread 4 handbreadths long. A person who spins. Okay, now we finished. Now the next, that was soiveya, right, which is dyeing. Now we're doing spinning, right? Threads, right, with a loom.
Weaving.
Weaving with, yeah, I think this is with a loom, right? With a harp and
No, it's not a harp.
a loom
It's
has
not
a,
a loom.
huh?
Just the
No, the harp and the warp and the harp. The hoof and the warp. It's a warp and the hoof. They're two different directions, right? So you're making the stitch.
Yeah.
Right. You may. Right. I think that's what this is speaking about.
None of us have been doing this recently.
You're gonna have to go to Lower Canada Village,
You know,
and visit over there. But they did things in the 1800s. Yeah, a person who spins a thread 4 handbreadths long from any fiber of which the thread is spun. This is right. Spinning is liable. These threads are spinning wool, linen, camel hair, goat's hair, animal sinews, and the other fibers of this nature. A person who makes felt is liable for performing a derivative of the forbidden labor of spinning if he makes felt from fibers that could have been used to spin a thread of ordinary thickness that is 4 handbreadths long. Okay. A person who makes 2 heedles is liable. A person who makes a sifter, a strainer, a basket, a hairnet, or one who weaves a rope bed performs a derivative of the forbidden labor of making heedles. Are you a heedler? All right. When he makes 2 frames of any one of the above, he is liable. Similarly, if a person who makes 2 frames of any object that is made a frame by a frame, like the above, is liable. Okay, I had a picture yesterday of such a thing, and it's in the other of the heedler. A person. Okay, so a person makes a sifter, strainer, or a basket. Okay, we said this, right? Similarly, a person makes a frame. Okay, 17. Weavers.
What about them?
So we spoke about spinning. That's toive. This is orig. I don't know. I think it might be different. Let's see. Weavers generally stretch out the threads on. Oh, okay. This is with the warp, right? Of the warp to the desired length, and the width of the fabric. Two people hold the beams to which the ends of the threads are connected, one from one side and one from the other side. The person beats the threads with a rod that goes in and out, right, of the warp, right? The threads with a rod and aligns them so that one will lie next to the other, right? Each thread next to each other. All the warp threads without the hoof. So the warp here, and then you're threading in one on top of the other, and that's the woof, I think, or the other way around. I don't know. I think that's yeah. Extending the threads as the weaver do is called mounting the warp. A person who extends these threads so that they are tout, I mean, I guess tight, is called the one who sets the warp. Bending the loom and inserting the woof between the warp threads is called weaving. So, right, so you right, that's the actual weaving, because the warp is just the threads that are going
into it,
going from the two sides of the of what's being holding them, right? And then you're taking weaving is because you're bobbing in and out. That's the warp, because you're warping it in and out, I guess. My gosh, gotta go back to school.
There you go.
18. The person who mounts the warp is liable. This is one of the 39 primary characters of forbidden labor. The person who beats the threads until they are separated and then aligns them performs a derivative of mounting the warp. What is the minimum measure? The one is liable, preparing the fabric that is 2 finger breadths wide. Okay. Similarly, a person is liable for weaving 2 threads of the fabric 2 finger breadths wide. The above applies whether one began the weaving of the garment or whether one of the 2 additional threads on the garment that had already been begun by another weaver. If one wove only a single thread but completed the garment by doing so, one is liable. If one weaves 2 threads a width of 3 frames at the end of the fabric, one is liable. What this can be compared to weaving a thin belt 3 frames wide. Okay, person who straightens. Now this is a different. No, this is part of the same thing. Sorry. The person who straightens the threads and separates them in the midst of the weaving process performs the derivative of the labor of weaving, right? Because you're putting in the warp, so you're now you gotta straighten it and make it tight and so on. So that's part of the process. Similarly, one who braids hair performs a derivative of labor of weaving. Measure of which one is liable, and making a braid is 2 finger breadths long. So you can't make a braid on Shabbos. Last halacha in this chapter. Whoa. One who is baitseya,
What does that mean? 2
threads is liable. Baitseya refers to the separation of the woven fabric. So, in other words, you put the fabric, but now you want to separate it for whatever. I don't know why you're separating the fabric. Let's see. Okay. The Rambam disagrees. He says it's about cutting off the extra fabric, but and what it means in the Talmud. Remember, this is all based on the Talmud, right? One is liable for the labor of B'tzeiah, whether one removes the woof from the warp or the warp from the woof. The above applies provided that one is not acting with a destructive intent, but rather with the intent to improve the garment. For example, there are people who mend tears in a very light garments. First, they undo the weave, right? So they're undoing the weave. Afterwards, they mend the garment and then reweave the threads that they undid. In this manner, they join 2 garments or 2 tears together, and they would be liable. A person who undoes a braid for the sake of fixing it performs the derivative labor of B'tzeiah. The minimum measure of the one is liable is the same that of the minimum measure for B'tzeiah. Whoa. That's okay. We're going to stop here. Amazing. Thank you,
you.
folks.